One of the guys on this list killed a corrections officer with his hands cuffed behind his back, and it's the reason the entire US federal prison system created a status called no human contact. Another one cut off his own ears in prison rather than face what was waiting for him in general population. These aren't just scary killers, guys. These are the inmates that changed how prisons operate because staff could not contain them. Let's get into it. Now, you probably know him for the crime that put him away, but it's what happened after that that earns him a spot on a Guards Never Forgot list. In the early 90s, a smuggled videotape surfaced showing Richard Speck inside prison, on hormones, doing illicit substances, having adult relations with other inmates, bragging on camera that he was having the time of his life behind bars. Guards and the public were floored. Not because he was violent inside, but because he basically turned the system into a joke and got away with it for years before anyone caught it on tape. It is said that the tape caused such public outrage it actually influenced prison reform conversations in Illinois. I don't know about you, but that's a different kind of scary. The system completely failed kind. Clarence Ray Allen is proof that you don't need working eyes or a free body to be a threat behind bars. This guy was legally blind, in his 70s, wheelchair bound near the end of his life, and he still ran a hit list from inside prison. He orchestrated the killings of 3 people, including a witness set to testify against him, all coordinated through phone calls and visits while he was locked up. Guards had to treat an elderly, disabled inmate like an active threat because, well, he was one. Apparently, that's the kind of case that keeps corrections officers up at night. It's never really over just because someone's behind a wall. Charles Bronson, sometimes called Britain's most violent prisoner, has taken hostages inside prison more than a dozen times. Guards, other staff, at one point a prison art teacher. He's staged rooftop protests, torn cells apart with his bare hands, and has been transferred between more high security units than almost any inmate in UK history, because no single prison could handle him for long. I mean, when your prison record reads like a highlight reel of hostage negotiations, Guards Never Forget Him isn't really a stretch. It's basically a job requirement for anyone who worked near his cell. Held for years in Australia's Goulburn Supermax, what makes Ivan Milat different from a lot of names on this list is the sheer persistence. This is a guy who spent years running escape plans, at one point even attempting to saw through bars with a smuggled hacksaw blade hidden in his cell. Guards had to treat his section like an active planning threat, basically indefinitely, because he really never stopped trying. It is believed prison authorities considered him one of the highest ongoing security risks in the entire Australian system, decades into his sentence. That is not a scary reputation. That's a permanent, active problem. We are staying in Australia for this one, Mark Chopper Reed. Now here's the part that made headlines. Reed had both of his ears amputated voluntarily while incarcerated, specifically so he'd be transferred out of the section he was in and away from inmates who were, in his words, trying to kill him. He handed his own ear to a guard afterward, just like it was nothing. I hate that this is real, but it is, and it tells you everything about how violent his section of that prison actually was. If doing that to yourself is your best survival strategy, guards weren't managing a prison anymore. They were managing like a war zone, I guess. Kenneth McDuff is the name that actually rewrote law, and to understand why, you have to go back to 1966, when he and an accomplice kidnapped and took the lives of 3 young women in Texas. Guards nicknamed him the Broomstick Killer for how one of those crimes was carried out, and he was sentenced to death 3 separate times for it. Then, in 1972, the Supreme Court's ruling in Furman v. Georgia voided death sentences across the entire country, and McDuff's death sentence got commuted to life with the possibility of parole. It is said that the prison staff who dealt with him considered him one of the most unpredictable, violent inmates in the system, someone who talked openly about what he'd do if he ever got out. Nobody on the inside doubted what he was. And then, in 1989, Texas paroled killed him anyway. Between October 1989 and March 1992, McDuff harmed and took the lives of at least 6 more women. Some sources say the number is higher. He was finally recaptured in 1992, sentenced to death again, and executed in 1998. The fallout was so severe that Texas overhauled its entire parole system, and lawmakers coined the term the McDuff rule for exactly this failure. Releasing someone this system already knew was going to kill again. I don't know, maybe that's the scariest kind of entry on this whole list. Not what he did behind bars, but what happened the moment the bars opened, because a court ruling 3 states away let a monster back onto the street. We are heading to Brazil for one of the most extreme prison records on this entire list. Pedro Rodrigues Filho, nicknamed Pedrinho Matador. This is a man who allegedly killed dozens of people after he was already incarcerated, fellow inmates, not outside victims. He claimed he only killed criminals inside the prison as a message to others. Guards weren't just managing a violent man, they were managing a walking body count that kept climbing while he was already locked up. Apparently that's about as close to a real-life horror movie premise as prison staff ever have to deal with. Carl Panzram didn't just terrify guards, he killed one. While incarcerated at Fort Leavenworth, he beat a prison foreman to death with an iron bar. And here's the part that is genuinely chilling, if that wasn't bad enough. He wasn't remorseful. He practically dared the system to execute him, on record saying that he would kill again the first chance he got, guards included. This one sucks. I don't know, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Panzram is one of the few names on any prison list who directly took the life of someone tasked with containing him and then told everyone he'd do it again. That's not a rumor, that's a documented, on-record threat. If you know true crime, you know Robert Maudsley, the man widely believed to have inspired the glass cell design in The Silence of the Lambs. Maudsley killed multiple fellow inmates inside prison, in at least one case reportedly causing catastrophic head trauma to a victim while guards were unable to intervene in time. The UK prison system's response was to build him a custom, below-ground glass and concrete cell. Food passed through a hatch, no direct human contact for over 3 decades. Isn't history fun? Genuinely, this is one of the only prisoners on Earth where the containment method itself became more famous than the crimes. Guards didn't just fear him. An entire wing of British prison architecture was redesigned because of him. In 1983, while both of his hands were handcuffed behind his back, Silverstein killed correctional officer Merle Klutz inside USP Marion. Guards had to figure out how a restrained man managed to kill a trained officer in broad daylight, and the honest answer is they still don't fully agree on it. The Bureau of Prisons' response was to create a brand new classification just for him: no human contact status. For over 30 years, Silverstein lived in total isolation. No physical contact with another human being, guards included, for decades. That policy became the blueprint for how the entire US federal system now handles its most dangerous inmates. I don't know, maybe the scariest thing about Silverstein isn't even what he did, it's that an entire prison system had to invent a new category of confinement just to make sure it never happened again. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!